premier tour des élections législatives.
The first round of the parliamentary elections is marked by the unprecedented decline of the leftists, and in particular the Socialists.
Et notamment du Parti Socialiste.
French President Emmanuel Macron's winning streak is continuing unabated. His centrist party is on track to securing a huge majority in the French parliament after Sunday's first round of voting. Macron's 16-month-old political party and its allies won a combined 32% of the vote, significantly more than the established centre-right Republicans. But the scale of the victory was marred by low voter turnout, with less than half of eligible voters showing up to the polls. Despite the smaller-than-expected mandate, Macron and his party are set to gain a commanding majority in the French parliament, where he hopes to push aside the political establishment. Part of that old order is France's Socialists, the party of former President Francois Hollande. They finished near the bottom and are expected to lose at least 200 seats. Most of the party's old guard were voted out in the first round, including its leader, who lost the Paris seat he held for 20 years. Well, I'm joined now from Paris by French journalist Pierre Hasky. He's the author of The Right to Happiness, which contemplates the key issues facing France. Good to talk to you once more, sir. Fascinating results that came through. Were those results surprising to you?
Well, it was by its scale. Actually, what is going on in France at the moment only happens through revolutions, usually. You know, a whole establishment has been almost destroyed and sent to retirement. But this happened through democratic elections. And this is quite staggering by the scale of it and also by the way it is being done. You know, most of the candidates who are going to be elected in the second round next Sunday are totally unknown to the general public, and they only get elected because they have the support of Mr. Macron. People campaign in the streets, and the citizens tell them, oh, you are the representative of Mr. Macron, I will vote for you, although they don't know anything about them. This is the type of things that is happening and which is changing the whole political landscape.
Now, you say revolution. Usually when there's a revolution, it's because people are extremely passionate one way or the other, either on the left or the right. What we're seeing here, based on all the available evidence, is that with a 49% turnout, those on the left or those on the right didn't show up. They didn't feel the need to go to the polls. And when it's a revolution, we're talking about a centrist revolution. What's going on there? Is there apathy on the left and the right?
It is indeed a centrist revolution, which is almost a contradiction in terms. What has happened is that voters, including part of the voters of the far right and the far left in the presidential election, behave as if they give Mr. Macron a chance. You know, the first months of Mr. Macron have been almost, it's like a plebiscite in the country. People have been very happy with the way the mood has changed in the country, and particularly his behavior on the international scene. You know, his meetings with Donald Trump, with Vladimir Putin, his reaction to the US getting out of the Paris climate agreement. All these have been really welcomed by the French public, and a lot of people are just thinking, okay, let's give him a chance, even if we don't agree with him, but at least there might be something good out of it. That's really the mood in the country at the moment.
A firm handshake can give you a lot of political capital, it seems. Let's talk about the Socialists for a moment. From a socialist president to people saying this is the death of the Socialists. What's going on? Are the Socialists finished?
I think so. I think the Socialist Party, as we've known it, is finished, in the sense that it's lost its reason for being. You know, the Socialists are completely stuck between, on one side, the reformist agenda of Mr. Macron and the radical agenda of Mr. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who was the presidential candidate for the far right. Mr. Mélenchon has managed to kill the socialists from the left, and Mr. Macron has killed it from the center. And today the socialists, who have a heavy weight to carry, which is the legacy of Mr. Hollande, whose presidency was very unpopular, have lost the strength of their message. It will take years for them to reconstruct probably a new party, maybe under a new name, but definitely with a new program.
Mm-hmm. So we know that Hamon definitely, didn't resonate with people during the elections a month ago. Mélenchon didn't make it. A lot of his supporters are apathetic right now. What does it mean for the left? Are there any figures on the French left who might be charismatic enough in order to revive the left right now?
So you have Mr. Mélenchon, who will probably be elected next Sunday in Marseille and will be a key figure in the new assembly, one of the few opposition figures in front of 400 and something members of parliament for En Marche, the party of Mr. Macron. And Mélenchon wants to be the person who will incarnate the left. But there is still room, I think, for a social democratic left that for the moment doesn't have any personality to defend it. And that's probably what is going to happen in the next few months. There are some clubs that are being formed by some of the figures of the Socialist Party to try to think a new strategy and a new positioning for the Socialists. And I think that's what's at stake for them, is either they reinvent themselves or they disappear completely.
A month ago, the far right and their candidate, Marine Le Pen, thought that they were a few steps away from the presidency. What's going to happen to the far right now? Surely they're not just going to roll over and die, so how's this going to play out?
They're not going to die, but they are in a difficult position because not only did they lose the presidential election, which most people really expected to happen, but they lost it in a bad way, in the sense that the debate between Marine Le Pen, their candidate, and Emmanuel Macron was a big blow for them because they saw their candidate in a weak position, and it was almost humiliating for her. And I think a lot of voters on the far right have abstained this time because they've lost confidence in their leadership and in what their party represents. And there is another problem, is that Marine Le Pen had a key issue in her program was leaving the euro, the currency, the euro. And that proved very unpopular in France. Many people who, because she, believed that she didn't have an alternative strategy. And how can you destroy the economic system if you don't have an alternative strategy? Mm-hmm. And that has weakened her. Now, obviously, the reasons for her popularity, the big divide between the have and the have-not in France, the winners and the losers of globalization, this has not disappeared and will not disappear overnight. So there is still room for the far right to reorganize and win support if, and that's a big if Mr. Macron doesn't succeed in showing everybody in France that his economic policies are inclusive, that he will not accept to have part of the country left on the side of the road.
Yeah, you said there's a feel-good factor. So clearly, he's done all the right things in terms of the symbolism. He's got a parliament that largely backs him. How long will the French people give him before they start complaining? So whether it's the economy or anything else, how much time does he have?
It's a good question. It's a bit an unknown quantity. The first test will be very soon, actually. In a few weeks' time, there will be an attempt to reform labor laws. And that's a very sensitive issue in France, because people are always very touchy when you touch social benefits that have been accumulated over the years. And Mr. Macron wants to reform in a very deep way the labor laws. Only a few months ago, we had hundreds of thousands of people in the streets complaining about attempts to change those labor laws. So now in Parliament, you won't have a strong opposition to it because Mr. Macron has a large majority. If he doesn't handle very well the unions who are powerful in France and public opinion at large, he might have the first tests of his authority and his popularity. But if he does well, everybody knows, and people voted for him in the knowledge that he was going to reform labor laws, and that gives him obviously some legitimacy to do it. So his political skill will be tested in the next few weeks.
Pierre Haskey, great to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us.